I sit in my home office at dawn, watching my wife Sarah's family frantically calling each other through the window. My phone buzzes with panicked messages from my brother-in-law Marcus and sister-in-law Diana. Yesterday at 10 in the morning, they voted me out of Thompson Construction, the company I built from nothing over 35 years. They thought they were clever, using their 51% family ownership to seize control. But I had spent all night executing the ultimate revenge. I sold every single one of my shares to their biggest competitor, Hartwell Industries, for $47 million cash. Let me take you back to where this all started. 20 years ago, I was just Joe Martinez, a 24-year-old dreamer working 2 dead-end jobs and attending community college business classes at night. That's where I met Sarah Thompson, the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. She had this way of listening when you talked about your dreams, like she actually believed you could make them happen. Sarah's father, Robert Thompson, owned a small construction company that was barely surviving. 3 employees, old equipment, and more debt than profit. When Sarah mentioned that her dad needed help with the business side of things, I jumped at the chance. Robert was a good man, honest as the day is long, but he ran his company like it was still 1970. Handwritten invoices, no computer systems, and bidding jobs based on gut feeling rather than actual calculations. I started working for Thompson Construction, making $12 an hour, but I treated that job like it was my destiny. I showed up an hour early every day and stayed until the work was done. While the other guys complained about overtime, I was redesigning their filing system and teaching myself construction management software on weekends. Within 6 months, I had digitized their entire operation. I created spreadsheets that tracked material costs, labor hours, and profit margins for every job. I developed a bidding system that increased our win rate by 40% while maintaining healthy margins. Robert was amazed when our quarterly profit jumped from $8,000 to $22,000. The real breakthrough came during my second year. We were bidding on a shopping center renovation that every contractor in town wanted. The job was worth $300,000, enough to keep us busy for 8 months. I spent 3 weeks analyzing every aspect of the project, calling suppliers for exact pricing, and creating a timeline so detailed it included weather contingencies. We won the bid, and more importantly, we completed it 2 weeks early and $15,000 under budget. Word spread fast in the construction community. Robert started getting calls for bigger projects that required the kind of systematic approach I'd brought to the company. By my 5th year, Thompson Construction had grown from 3 employees to 18. We had modern equipment, a real office space, and a reputation for quality work delivered on time and on budget. Robert sat me down one day and said something I'll never forget. "Joe, this company was dying when you walked through that door. You didn't just save it. You transformed it into something I never imagined it could be." That's when he offered me a partnership, 49% ownership, in exchange for everything I'd contributed and a commitment to keep growing the business. Sarah was thrilled. We'd been dating for 3 years, and this felt like Robert's way of welcoming me into the family officially. The ownership split seemed fair at the time. Robert kept 30% as the founder. Sarah got 15% as his daughter and future inheritor, while Marcus and Diana each received 3%. They were both in college then, Marcus studying communications and Diana pursuing a business degree. Robert figured they'd eventually join the company and earn larger stakes through contribution. Sarah and I got married that fall in a beautiful ceremony at the local country club. Robert walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and when he shook my hand at the altar, he whispered, "Take care of my little girl, son." I felt like the luckiest man alive. I had the woman of my dreams, a thriving business, and a family that accepted me completely. Marcus joined the company after graduation with big ideas and bigger ambitions. He was charismatic and charming, great with clients during the initial meetings. But Marcus had no patience for the detailed work that actually makes a construction business successful. He'd promise clients the moon during sales presentations, then disappear when it came time to manage the actual project execution. Diana came aboard 2 years later with her freshly minted MBA and immediate opinions about everything we were doing wrong. She wanted to expand into commercial real estate, diversify into property management, and implement corporate structures she'd learned about in business school. Her ideas weren't necessarily bad, but they showed a fundamental misunderstanding of our industry and our company's strengths. Robert always played peacemaker when tensions arose. He'd listen patiently to Diana's proposals and Marcus's grand schemes, then usually side with my more conservative, proven approaches. "Joe's got good instincts," he'd say. "Let's stick with what works until we're sure about the next step." For 15 years, this dynamic worked well enough. We continued growing steadily, building a solid reputation and healthy profit margins. Robert trusted my judgment on operations, while I respected his wisdom and experience. Marcus handled client relations when his attention span allowed, and Diana managed administrative tasks when she wasn't pursuing her latest business theory. But I started noticing changes about 18 months ago. Subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Family dinners that I wasn't invited to. Whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Marcus suddenly showing interest in financial details he'd ignored for years. Diana asking pointed questions about client contracts and profit distributions. The first real warning sign came during a family barbecue last summer. I was helping Robert flip burgers when I overheard Marcus and Diana talking near the pool. "He's not really family," Marcus was saying. "When Dad retires, we shouldn't be working for an outsider." Diana's response chilled me to the bone. "Joe built this company, but that doesn't mean he should control it forever. It's time we took back what's rightfully ours." I didn't say anything to Sarah that night, hoping I'd misunderstood or taken their words out of context. But I started paying closer attention to family dynamics, and what I discovered broke my heart. Sarah, the woman I'd loved and trusted for 20 years, was participating in conversations about my future without including me in the discussion. The betrayal wasn't just professional. It was deeply personal. These people had become my family. I'd worked 18-hour days to build something meaningful for all of us. I'd sacrificed opportunities with larger firms because I believed in our family business. And now they were plotting to remove me like I was some kind of hired gun who'd outlived his usefulness. 3 weeks before Robert's death, I made a devastating discovery that confirmed my worst fears. While picking up forgotten paperwork from the office on a Sunday evening, I heard voices in the conference room. The entire family was there with someone I didn't recognize, a man in an expensive suit who was clearly some kind of attorney or consultant. I stood in the hallway, hidden by shadows, and listened to them discuss succession planning and family control structures. The stranger was explaining legal mechanisms for removing minority shareholders and the importance of timing such actions properly. Sarah's voice was the most painful to hear. "Joe's been wonderful for the company, but it's time for the next generation to take leadership. We need to think about our children's inheritance." That night, I realized my marriage and my business partnership were both built on foundations that could shift without warning. The family I'd devoted my life to serving was planning to discard me when it became convenient. 3 weeks after that overheard conversation, Robert collapsed at the job site during a routine inspection. "Massive heart attack," the paramedics said. He was gone before the ambulance reached the hospital. The funeral was devastating, not just because I'd lost my mentor and father figure, but because I could see the calculation behind the family's grief. During the viewing, I noticed Diana having hushed conversations with a sharply dressed man who introduced himself as Jonathan Blackwood from Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the state. When I asked Diana about it later, she claimed Blackwood was just helping with estate planning and probate issues. But something about her nervous demeanor told me there was much more to the story. The days following Robert's funeral were strange and tense. Sarah became distant, claiming she needed time to process her father's death. She started working late, which was unusual since she'd always preferred to be home by dinner time. Marcus suddenly developed an intense interest in company operations he'd ignored for years, asking detailed questions about client relationships, ongoing contracts, and financial procedures. Diana appointed herself as the family spokesperson for all business matters, insisting that major decisions should be postponed until Dad's affairs are properly settled. She started attending every client meeting and project review, taking copious notes and asking questions that seemed designed to understand every aspect of our operations. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received an email that wasn't intended for me. Diana had accidentally copied me on a message meant only for the family attorney. The subject line was Thompson Construction Transition Timeline, and the contents made my blood run cold. The email chain revealed months of planning and preparation. They'd hired business evaluators to assess the company's worth, deliberately choosing firms known for conservative valuations. They'd consulted with employment attorneys about the legal requirements for removing a minority shareholder from management positions. Most shocking of all, they'd been documenting my decisions and actions, building a case for management disagreements and incompatible business philosophies. Sarah's contributions to the email thread were the most heartbreaking. She wrote detailed analyses of my leadership style, noting instances where I disagreed with family members or made decisions independently. She characterized my efficiency improvements and cost-cutting measures as overly aggressive and suggested that my corporate mindset was incompatible with their family business values. The timeline showed they'd been planning this action for at least 6 months, possibly longer. They were waiting for the right moment to strike, and Robert's death had apparently provided the perfect opportunity. With Robert gone, they had clear majority control and no internal advocate for my position. But the most devastating revelation came in an email from Marcus to the attorney. He wrote, "Joe turned Dad's small company into a real business, and we're grateful for that. But he's not blood family, and this is a family company. It's time for the Thompson name to mean Thompson Control. We can buy him out fairly and move forward with family leadership." The casual dismissal of 20 years of partnership, marriage, and dedication hit me like a physical blow. These people had accepted my labor, my expertise, and my loyalty, while secretly viewing me as an outsider who could be discarded when convenient. The final email in the chain outlined their strategy in detail. They would wait until landing the municipal building contract I'd been negotiating for 8 months, ensuring the company's value was at its peak. Then they'd call a shareholders' meeting, vote me out of all management positions, and offer a buyout at the conservative valuation they'd already obtained. The municipal contract was worth $12 million, the largest project in Thompson Construction's history. I'd spent countless hours building relationships with city planners, attending zoning meetings, and refining our proposal. The contract would secure the company's financial future for the next 3 years and establish us as a major player in municipal construction. They were planning to let me finish securing their future, then steal it from me. That night, I sat in my home office until dawn, reading and rereading those emails. The betrayal wasn't just about business control or financial gain. It was about fundamental respect and recognition. After 20 years of building something together, they saw me as an employee to be terminated rather than a partner to be consulted. Sarah found me there in the morning, still staring at my computer screen. She tried to act normally, asking about my day and discussing weekend plans. But I could see the guilt in her eyes, the knowledge that she was living a lie every moment she pretended our marriage was secure. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I spent the following weeks observing and documenting. I watched Marcus practice his speeches for taking over client relationships. I saw Diana reorganizing filing systems to ensure she understood every aspect of our operations. I witnessed Sarah struggling with the weight of her deception, becoming increasingly nervous and withdrawn. The final proof came when I discovered they'd already started undermining my relationships with key clients and vendors. Marcus had called our 3 largest clients, ostensibly to check in after Robert's death, but actually to plant seeds about upcoming leadership transitions and assure them that family management would provide more stability. They weren't just planning to remove me from the company I'd built. They were actively working to ensure I couldn't compete with them or maintain industry relationships afterward. The depth of their betrayal went beyond anything I'd imagined possible. As the date for the municipal contract announcement approached, I realized I had two choices: accept their betrayal and fade away quietly, or fight back with everything I had. The decision was easier than I expected. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider, I'd show them what an outsider with nothing left to lose could accomplish. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for Monday morning, the day after the municipal contract announcement. I spent that weekend in a state I'd never experienced before, a mixture of rage, determination, and crystal-clear focus. Everything I'd built over 20 years was about to be stolen from me, but I wasn't going out without a fight. I called my attorney, Patricia Chen, on Saturday morning. Patricia was brilliant, tough, and completely honest about legal realities. I'd consulted her during various business decisions over the years, and she understood both my situation and the company's structure better than anyone outside the family. "Joe," she said after reviewing the partnership agreements and corporate bylaws, "I have to be straight with you. With 51% voting control, they can legally remove you from management and force a buyout of your shares. The partnership agreement includes standard provisions for resolving irreconcilable differences, and they've clearly been building a case for that argument." The buyout valuation process was particularly frustrating. The agreement required fair market value to be determined by a qualified business appraiser, but the family got to choose the appraiser. They'd already selected a firm known for conservative valuations, especially for companies with family ownership complications. Patricia estimated that their chosen evaluator would value my 49% stake at somewhere between $15 and $20 million, significantly below the company's actual worth. The payment terms would likely be spread over several years with minimal interest, making the real value even lower. "Is there anything I can do to stop them?" I asked. "Legally, no," Patricia replied. "But you do have one significant advantage they might not have considered. Your 49% stake belongs to you completely. You can sell those shares to anyone you choose, at any price you negotiate, as long as you give the family first right of refusal at the proposed terms." That conversation planted the seed of an idea that would become my salvation. I spent Saturday afternoon reviewing every business contact I'd made over the past 20 years, looking for potential buyers who might be interested in acquiring a minority stake in a successful construction company. One name kept coming to mind: William Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries. Bill was our primary competitor, a shrewd businessman who'd built his company through strategic acquisitions and aggressive expansion. We'd competed for dozens of contracts over the years, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But I'd always respected his business acumen and professional approach. 6 months earlier, at a construction industry conference, Bill had approached me during a cocktail reception. After some casual conversation about market conditions and regulatory changes, he'd made an interesting comment. "You've built something impressive at Thompson Construction, Joe. If you ever want to explore partnership opportunities, give me a call." At the time, I dismissed it as typical networking conversation. Now, facing the loss of everything I'd worked for, those words took on new significance. Sunday evening, I drove to the office to collect personal items and review files one final time. As I sat in my office, surrounded by 20 years of memories and achievements, I picked up my phone and dialed Bill Hartwell's personal number. "Bill, this is Joe Martinez from Thompson Construction. I know it's Sunday evening, but I wanted to discuss the partnership opportunity you mentioned at the conference." Bill's response surprised me. "Joe, I was hoping you'd call. I've been watching your company's growth, and frankly, I'm impressed. Are you interested in exploring an acquisition?" "Something like that," I replied. "How quickly could you move if the opportunity was right?" "For the right deal, very quickly. I've had Thompson Construction on my acquisition target list for 2 years. Your operational efficiency, client relationships, and project management systems are exactly what we need to expand into the municipal construction market." We talked for 2 hours. Bill explained that Hartwell Industries had been preparing for major expansion but lacked Thompson Construction's specialized expertise and established relationships. He'd been waiting for the right opportunity to approach us, but had heard rumors about family ownership disputes and decided to wait for stability. The numbers Bill discussed were staggering. He valued Thompson Construction at over $100 million, making my 49% stake worth approximately $49 million. The municipal contract I'd just secured made the company even more attractive as an acquisition target. "Joe, I'll be completely honest with you," Bill said. "I've been planning to make a formal acquisition offer within the next month. If you're willing to sell your stake, I'd be prepared to move immediately. Cash transaction, closing within 48 hours. But the most satisfying part of our conversation came when Bill explained his plans for Thompson Construction post-acquisition. Hartwell Industries was known for bringing in their own management teams and implementing their proven operational systems. The existing Thompson family members would face serious questions about their competence and fit within Hartwell's corporate culture. "I believe in meritocracy," Bill explained. "People who contribute value keep their positions and advance. People who don't contribute value find themselves looking for new opportunities very quickly." By the end of our conversation, I had a complete understanding of my options. I could accept the family's buyout offer of $15 to $20 million paid over 5 years, or I could sell immediately to Hartwell for $47 million cash and watch them deal with their new business partner. The choice was obvious, but I wanted to understand the full implications before proceeding. Bill agreed to have his attorneys prepare the necessary paperwork overnight, with the transaction structured to close Monday morning at 9 o'clock, 1 hour before the family's shareholders' meeting. Monday morning, I woke up before dawn and completed the final details of the share transfer. Patricia Chen had reviewed all documentation and confirmed that everything was legal and properly executed. By 8 o'clock, the transaction was complete, and I officially owned 0% of Thompson Construction. At 8:30, I received a text message from Bill Hartwell. "Transaction complete. Thank you for this opportunity, Joe. I think this is going to be a very interesting partnership." I walked into the Thompson Construction conference room at 9:30 that Monday morning as a former shareholder, but nobody else in the room knew it yet. I was about to watch the family's carefully planned coup become the beginning of their worst nightmare. The conference room felt different that Monday morning. The same oak table where we'd celebrated contract wins and planned company growth now felt like a courtroom where I was about to be tried and convicted. Sarah sat across from me, unable to make eye contact. Marcus wore a barely concealed smirk of satisfaction. Diana shuffled through papers with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this moment for months. Attorney Jonathan Blackwood commanded the head of the table, with the confidence of someone accustomed to corporate power plays. His expensive suit and leather briefcase projected authority, and his opening remarks left no doubt about the meeting's purpose. "We're here today to address irreconcilable differences in company management and ownership structure," Blackwood began, reading from prepared documents. "The Thompson family has determined that new leadership direction is necessary for the company's continued success." Before he could continue, I raised my hand politely. "I need to take a quick call. Personal matter. I'll just be a minute." I stepped into the hallway and called Patricia Chen to confirm that all paperwork had been filed properly and that Hartwell Industries was officially listed as the owner of my former shares. Everything was in order. Returning to the conference room, I listened quietly as Blackwood outlined their case against my continued involvement. They documented every disagreement, every independent decision, every instance where I'd prioritized efficiency over family consensus. The picture they painted was of an outsider who'd become too powerful and too independent for a family business. Marcus spoke next, his voice filled with fake sincerity. "Joe, we appreciate everything you've done for this company. Dad always said you saved Thompson Construction, and we're grateful for that. But this is a family business, and it's time for family leadership." Diana's presentation was more businesslike. She outlined their vision for the company's future, emphasizing collaborative decision-making and family values-based management. Her plans included restructuring my operational improvements to give family members more control over day-to-day decisions. The buyout offer was presented with great ceremony, as if they were doing me a tremendous favor. $18 million for my 49% stake, to be paid over 5 years at 3% annual interest. The total value, accounting for inflation and opportunity cost, was substantially below fair market value. "We think this is more than generous," Diana said, sliding the contract across the table. "It recognizes your contributions while ensuring the company remains in family hands." But the moment that truly revealed their character came when Marcus mentioned his conversations with our major clients. "I've already spoken with the Peterson Group, Municipal Buildings Authority, and Riverside Development. I've assured them that family management will provide more stability than the aggressive expansion approach we've been pursuing." My blood ran cold as I realized the full scope of their betrayal. They hadn't just planned to remove me from the company. They'd actively undermined my professional reputation to prevent me from competing or starting a new business. Marcus had essentially poisoned my relationships with the industry's biggest players before even officially firing me. "You contacted our clients without my knowledge?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite my anger. "I contacted Thompson Construction clients," Marcus corrected smugly. "As a family member and future leader, I have every right to manage client relationships." The cruelty of their strategy was breathtaking. They were destroying my professional credibility, while simultaneously offering me a below-market buyout that would leave me financially dependent on their payment schedule for the next 5 years. Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Joe, this doesn't have to be adversarial. We can work together to make this transition smooth for everyone." Looking at my wife of 20 years, the woman I'd trusted with every dream and fear, I felt something break inside me. Not just disappointment or anger, but a fundamental shift in how I viewed our entire relationship. "You're absolutely right, Sarah," I said calmly. "This doesn't have to be adversarial at all." I reached for the pen they'd provided and signed the removal documents without hesitation. The room fell silent as everyone processed my unexpected compliance. "I respect your decision," I continued, my voice steady and sincere. "Thompson Construction should be controlled by the Thompson family. You're absolutely right about that." Marcus and Diana exchanged confused glances, clearly having expected more resistance. Blackwood seemed suspicious of my cooperation, probably wondering if I was planning some kind of legal challenge. "However," I added, reaching for my phone, "I should mention that I sold my shares this morning. The new minority partner should be calling any moment to introduce himself." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Sarah's face went white. Marcus's smug expression transformed into confusion and dawning horror. Diana dropped her papers as she realized the implications of what I'd just said. Right on cue, my phone rang. I answered cheerfully, making sure my voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hello, Bill. Perfect timing." "Yes, they're all here in the conference room. Would you like to speak with your new business partners?" I handed the phone to a stunned Jonathan Blackwood. "It's William Hartwell from Hartwell Industries. He'd like to congratulate you on your new partnership." The transformation in the room was immediate and devastating. Marcus's face went from confusion to pure terror as he recognized the name. Diana started frantically whispering to Blackwood, trying to understand what had just happened. Sarah stared at me with a mixture of shock and something that might have been admiration for the magnitude of my counterstrike. Blackwood activated the speakerphone with shaking hands, and Bill Hartwell's confident voice filled the room. "Good morning, everyone. This is William Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries. I want to thank the Thompson family for this opportunity to become your business partner. Joe contacted me about divesting his ownership stake, and we were delighted to acquire such a valuable position in a successful company." The silence in the room was deafening. I could practically hear their hearts beating as they processed the reality of their new situation. Bill Hartwell's voice continued cheerfully through the speakerphone, oblivious to the shocked faces around the conference table. "I've been admiring Thompson Construction's growth for several years, and I'm excited about the synergies we can create between our companies." Marcus found his voice first, though it came out as more of a croak. "Mr. Hartwell, we weren't aware that Joe was considering selling his shares." "Oh, it happened very quickly," Bill replied enthusiastically. "When Joe called yesterday about partnership opportunities, we moved fast to make it happen. In my experience, The best business deals happen when everyone moves decisively. Diana frantically scribbled notes and whispered urgently to Blackwood, who looked like he was rapidly calculating legal implications and finding no good options. The partnership agreement was clear. Any shareholder could sell their stake as long as they offered first right of refusal to existing partners at the proposed terms. "What exactly are your plans for Thompson Construction?" Sarah asked, her voice barely steady. "Excellent question," Bill responded. "Hartwell Industries has been looking for the right opportunity to expand into municipal construction, and Thompson Construction has exactly the expertise and relationships we need. We'll be implementing our proven management systems and bringing in our operational efficiency teams to optimize performance." The corporate speak was terrifying in its implications. Everyone in the room understood that operational efficiency teams meant outside consultants who would evaluate every position and eliminate anyone deemed redundant or incompetent. "Of course, we'll want to conduct comprehensive evaluations of all current personnel to ensure they're compatible with Hartwell Industries' standards and expectations," Bill continued. "Not everyone will be a good fit for our corporate culture, but we're committed to retaining talent that adds value." Marcus's face had gone completely pale. His entire identity was built around being charming and personable, qualities that meant nothing to corporate efficiency experts focused on measurable results and accountability. Diana's MBA suddenly seemed less impressive when faced with the prospect of justifying her performance to executives who'd built successful companies through merit rather than family connections. "When would these evaluations take place?" Blackwood asked, clearly trying to understand the timeline for what was essentially a corporate takeover disguised as a partnership. "We're moving quickly," Bill replied. "I have teams available to start Wednesday. We'll need complete access to financial records, client contracts, operational procedures, and personnel files. Standard due diligence for a partnership of this magnitude." The word partnership was particularly cruel, since everyone understood that Hartwell Industries' 49% stake gave them enormous leverage over company operations, while the Thompson family retained legal liability for business decisions. "Joe, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Bill's voice asked through the speaker. "Of course." I stepped into the hallway, taking the phone with me, leaving the Thompson family to contemplate their new reality. "How are they taking it?" Bill asked, his voice filled with amusement. "About as well as you'd expect," I replied. "They're starting to understand that their little coup just became their worst nightmare. I have to admit, Joe, this is working out better than I hoped. I was planning to make an acquisition offer anyway, but getting 49% at a favorable price while avoiding negotiations with a unified family block is ideal. Your timing was perfect." When I returned to the conference room, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The confidence and smugness that had characterized the family's earlier presentations had been replaced by barely controlled panic. "Mr. Hartwell," Diana said carefully, "we'd like to discuss the terms of this new partnership arrangement." "Of course," Bill replied. "My attorneys will be in touch tomorrow to schedule a comprehensive partnership agreement meeting. We'll need to align our operational standards, financial reporting requirements, and management accountability measures." Each phrase was like another nail in their coffin. Operational standards meant their casual approach to project management would be replaced by Hartwell's demanding efficiency requirements. Financial reporting requirements meant Diana's informal bookkeeping would be scrutinized by professional accountants. Management accountability measures meant Marcus would actually have to prove his value to the company. "Are there any immediate changes we should be aware of?" Sarah asked. "Nothing dramatic," Bill assured her. "We'll maintain current operations, while our evaluation teams assess optimization opportunities. However, I should mention that we'll be implementing our standard financial controls immediately. All expenditures over $5,000 will require approval from our financial oversight team." The financial controls were particularly devastating for Diana, who'd been accustomed to authorizing expenses without detailed justification or oversight. Marcus's expense account for client entertainment and his company car were now subject to corporate scrutiny. "What about client relationships?" Marcus asked. clearly worried about his primary area of responsibility. "We'll be conducting comprehensive client satisfaction surveys and relationship assessments," Bill replied. "Hartwell Industries maintains very high standards for client service and relationship management. We want to ensure all clients receive the level of professional service they deserve." The threat was clear, without being explicit. Marcus's casual approach to client management and his recent interference with established relationships would be evaluated by professional standards rather than family loyalty. After Bill ended the call, the conference room remained silent for several long minutes. Finally, Blackwood spoke. "We need to understand your legal options and plan accordingly." "What legal options?" I asked innocently. "Everything was completely legal and properly executed. I offered the shares to the family first at the proposed terms. When you declined to purchase them, I sold them to a qualified buyer at fair market value. The beauty of my strategy was its complete legality. The partnership agreement had anticipated the possibility of a shareholder wanting to exit, but it had never considered the possibility of a strategic sale to a competitor who would use the minority stake as leverage for eventual full acquisition." Sarah approached me as the others huddled with their attorney. "Joe, what have you done?" "I've protected myself from a family that was planning to betray me," I replied calmly. "You voted me out of the company I built. Now live with the consequences." "This will destroy everything Dad built," she whispered. "Your family destroyed what your father built the moment you decided to treat me like an employee instead of a partner. I just responded to your actions with actions of my own." As I prepared to leave the conference room for the final time, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction, because justice was being served. Sadness, because it had come to this point at all. The family I'd devoted 20 years to serving was about to learn what it meant to work for people who valued results over relationships, competence over loyalty, and accountability over excuses. The following week unfolded like a masterclass in corporate efficiency meeting family business dysfunction. Hartwell Industries moved with the precision of a military operation, sending teams of analysts, accountants, and operational specialists to evaluate every aspect of Thompson construction. I watched the chaos from a distance, receiving daily updates from employees who remained loyal to me despite the official change in leadership. The contrast between Hartwell's professional approach and the Thompson family's panicked responses was both satisfying and painful to witness. Marcus's first evaluation meeting became legendary among the staff. When Hartwell's project management specialist asked him to explain the timeline and cost projections for the municipal building contract, Marcus couldn't provide basic details about a project he'd supposedly been managing. His charm, offensive, so effective with small-town clients, fell completely flat with executives who measured performance in concrete metrics. Marcus tried to give them his usual song and dance about relationship building and client satisfaction, reported Jenny, our longtime office manager. The Hartwell guy just stared at him and said, "Can you show me the project timeline, cost breakdown, and risk mitigation plan?" Marcus had to admit he didn't know where those documents were. Diana's confrontation with Hartwell's financial team was even more devastating. 20 years of informal bookkeeping and casual expense reporting suddenly faced professional scrutiny. When asked to explain irregular vendor payments and inconsistent expense categories, Diana became defensive and claimed that family businesses operate differently from corporations. The Hartwell financial specialist's response was swift and brutal. Family businesses that operate without proper financial controls don't remain successful family businesses for very long. But the most significant development came on Wednesday, when Hartwell's operational assessment team discovered what they politely termed irregularities in the company's financial records. Someone had been creating false vendor invoices and manipulating expense reports to cover unauthorized expenditures. The irregularities totaled over $400,000, spanning the past 3 years. The pattern suggested systematic embezzlement rather than simple bookkeeping errors. Hartwell Industries immediately implemented emergency financial controls and demanded a complete forensic accounting audit. That evening, Sarah appeared at my temporary apartment, tears streaming down her face and carrying a manila folder that would change everything I thought I knew about the family's betrayal. "Joe, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice breaking. "It's about Diana, about why we really wanted to remove you from the company." The folder contained bank statements, credit card bills, and financial documents that painted a horrifying picture of Diana's secret life. Massive gambling debts, online poker losses, sports betting accounts with balances in the tens of thousands. The total debt exceeded $400,000, matching exactly the amount of missing company funds. "Diana has been stealing from the company for 3 years," Sarah confessed. "She's addicted to gambling, and she's been covering her losses by manipulating our financial records." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "You knew about this?" "We found out 6 months ago when creditors started calling the office looking for her. Diana begged us not to turn her in to the police. She said she could pay it back if we gave her time and control over the company finances." The pieces of the puzzle fell into place with sickening clarity. The family's betrayal wasn't driven by greed or power lust, but by desperation to protect Diana from criminal prosecution. They'd convinced themselves that removing me from oversight would give them the freedom to quietly resolve Diana's crimes without outside interference. "She told us you were getting suspicious about the financial discrepancies," Sarah continued. "She said you were starting to ask questions about vendor payments and expense reports. Diana convinced Marcus and me that you were going to have her arrested if you discovered the truth. So you decided to destroy me instead of dealing with her crimes? We thought we could handle it internally. Keep it in the family." Diana promised she'd get help for her gambling problem and make restitution for what she'd stolen. We just needed time to fix things without involving law enforcement. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. Diana had used the family's love and loyalty against them, turning their protective instincts into weapons against me. She'd convinced them that I was the threat rather than the solution to their problem. "Did you ever consider just telling me the truth?" I asked. "Did you ever think that I might want to help rather than destroy the family?" Sarah's sob was answer enough. They'd been so focused on protecting Diana that they'd never considered the possibility that honesty and cooperation might yield better results than betrayal and deception. "Joe, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any way to fix what we've done? Diana's willing to confess everything and make full restitution. She's ready to get help for her gambling addiction. Can you help us save the family?" Looking at Sarah, broken and desperate, I felt the first crack in the armor of anger I'd built around my heart. These people had betrayed me, but they'd done it out of misguided love for a family member rather than simple greed or malice. The question now was whether justice required their complete destruction, or whether there was a path toward redemption that could preserve what remained of our relationships while ensuring Diana faced consequences for her actions. William Hartwell had already indicated that the forensic audit would likely result in criminal charges against whoever was responsible for the embezzlement. Diana would face prison time unless someone intervened on her behalf. I had the power to show mercy or demand justice. The choice would define not just Diana's future, but the possibility of ever rebuilding trust with the family that had raised me as their own. I spent 3 sleepless nights, wrestling with the most difficult decision of my life. The evidence against Diana was overwhelming, and William Hartwell's forensic accountants had already recommended pursuing criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Diana would likely face 5 to 10 years in federal prison if the case proceeded normally. But Sarah's revelation had fundamentally changed my understanding of the betrayal. The family hadn't conspired against me out of greed or ambition, but out of desperate love for a sister and daughter who'd manipulated their emotions to cover her crimes. On Thursday morning, I arranged a meeting that would determine everyone's future. I asked William Hartwell, Patricia Chen, and the entire Thompson family to gather at our law office for what I described as a comprehensive resolution discussion. Diana arrived looking haggard and defeated, clearly understanding that her crimes had been discovered and her family's protective efforts had failed. Marcus and Sarah appeared anxious but hopeful that some solution might be possible. Jonathan Blackwood sat quietly, probably calculating the legal implications of whatever I was about to propose. "Before we discuss anyone's future," I began, Diana needs to confess completely to what she's done and explain how she manipulated the family into betraying me. Diana's confession was painful to hear. She described her gambling addiction starting small with office lottery pools and casino trips, then escalating to online poker games that consumed entire nights. When she started losing more than her salary could cover, she began borrowing from company accounts, always intending to pay the money back. I told myself it was just temporary, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. I convinced myself that I could win back everything I'd lost and return the money before anyone noticed. But gambling addiction doesn't work that way. The more I lost, the more desperate I became. When I started asking questions about financial irregularities 6 months earlier, Diana panicked. Instead of confessing, she convinced her family that I was planning to have her arrested and destroy the Thompson name in the community. I told them Joe was looking for an excuse to take over the company completely, Diana said. I made them believe that removing him was the only way to protect our family's reputation and keep me out of prison. Marcus and Sarah had genuinely believed they were protecting their family from destruction, never realizing they were being manipulated by the person who'd created the crisis in the first place. William Hartwell listened to the confession with the cold attention of someone accustomed to corporate fraud cases. This is exactly the kind of situation that destroys family businesses, he observed. Emotional decisions replacing business judgment, family loyalty enabling criminal behavior, and operational oversight compromised by personal relationships. However, he continued, I'm primarily interested in protecting my investment and ensuring stable operations going forward. If we can achieve those goals while resolving this situation internally, I'm willing to consider alternatives to criminal prosecution. I outlined my proposed resolution, terms I'd spent days crafting to balance justice with mercy. Diana would immediately resign from all company positions and surrender any ownership stake. She would enter a court-supervised rehabilitation program for gambling addiction and make full restitution for stolen funds over 5 years. In exchange, we wouldn't press criminal charges, allowing her to rebuild her life without a felony conviction. Marcus and Sarah could retain their positions and ownership percentages, but with significant changes. Their stakes would be reduced to reflect the company's true value after accounting for Diana's theft, and they would participate in mandatory business management training to prove their competence. Most importantly, I would return to Thompson Construction as CEO under a new partnership structure with Hartwell Industries. Bill would maintain his 49% ownership, but I would have operational control and a path to potentially buy back majority ownership over 10 years. This gives everyone a chance to earn redemption through their actions rather than losing everything through their mistakes, I explained. Diana can get the help she needs while making amends. Marcus and Sarah can prove they belong in this business, and the company can continue serving our clients and employees. William Hartwell's response surprised everyone. Joe, I came into this situation looking for a business opportunity, but what I've found is exactly the kind of principled leadership that builds lasting enterprises. Your willingness to balance justice with redemption, combined with your operational expertise, is exactly what Hartwell Industries looks for in long-term partners. Sarah's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. She broke down completely, sobbing with relief and gratitude. Joe, after everything we did to you, why would you give us a second chance? Because 20 years of partnership and love can't be erased by 6 months of fear and poor judgment, I replied. Diana's addiction created this crisis, but your family's response was driven by love, not malice. That's something worth preserving. Marcus stepped forward and offered his hand. Joe, I know I have a lot to prove, but I want to earn my place in this company the right way. Will you teach me how to actually contribute value instead of just taking up space? His humility was genuine and complete. The charming but lazy brother-in-law had been replaced by someone who understood that respect must be earned through competence and character. Diana's response was the most important of all. Joe, I don't deserve your mercy, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life earning it. I'll get the help I need, pay back every penny I stole, and prove that you made the right choice by giving me a chance to make amends. 6 months later, Thompson Construction had been transformed into something stronger than it had ever been before. Diana successfully completed her rehabilitation program and was working part-time for a nonprofit organization, slowly rebuilding trust through consistent, honest behavior. Marcus threw himself into learning actual business skills with the dedication of someone who'd discovered the satisfaction of real accomplishment. His client relationships improved dramatically when backed by genuine expertise rather than superficial charm. Sarah and I entered marriage counseling, working to rebuild trust and communication that had been damaged by months of deception. The process was difficult but ultimately strengthening, as we learned to address conflicts directly rather than letting them fester in secret. The partnership with Hartwell Industries provided the capital and expertise needed to expand into new markets while maintaining the family atmosphere that made Thompson Construction special. Bill Hartwell became not just a business partner, but a mentor who helped all of us think more strategically about long-term growth. Most importantly, the company's reputation in the community was not only preserved but enhanced. Our clients respected how we'd handled a crisis with integrity rather than trying to cover up problems. Our employees felt more secure knowing that the business was built on solid foundations rather than family politics. Standing in my home office on a quiet Saturday morning, watching my wife and her family working together in the garden, I reflected on the profound lesson this experience had taught me. Betrayal reveals character, but forgiveness creates opportunity for growth. My willingness to balance justice with mercy hadn't just saved my marriage and business relationships. It had created something stronger and more valuable than what we'd started with. The greatest victory wasn't destroying those who'd hurt me, but building something better from the ashes of betrayal. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is showing people a better version of themselves than they knew was possible. Thompson Construction continued to thrive, but more importantly, the Thompson family had learned to value trust, honesty, and mutual respect over blind loyalty and protective deception. Diana's addiction had nearly destroyed everything we'd built, but our response to that crisis ultimately made us stronger, wiser, and more united than we'd ever been before. The municipal building project we completed became a symbol of what's possible when people choose redemption over revenge, growth over grievance, and hope over hatred. Every time I drive past that building, I'm reminded that the most meaningful victories are the ones that lift everyone up rather than tearing anyone down. What would you do if the people closest to you betrayed everything you'd built together? Would you choose revenge or redemption? Have you ever had to forgive someone who hurt you deeply? And if so, how did that choice change your life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's biggest challenges. And share this with someone who might need to hear about the power of choosing forgiveness over revenge. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember that sometimes the greatest strength comes from showing mercy when you have every right to seek justice.